Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
So happy to be back. So happy to be back right where I belong, the famous and revered Attila the Hun chair at the distinguished and prestigious Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. This, by the way, the largest free education institution in the world. There are no graduates, there are no degrees, because the learning never stops. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. We've changed the email address. Let me remind you of this again. It's now lrushbo@eibnet.us. Just changed the domain there. It's no longer .com. It's eibnet.us if you'd rather get hold of us by email. So, folks, let us review the last few days that have transpired here in our great country. Donald Trump, presidential candidate, Republican side, visited Louisiana. They've had some terrible flooding there. There hasn't been one representative of the Obama administration get even close to Louisiana. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Jay Johnson went for a day. The guy who spells his name J-E-H. Okay, Jay Johnson went for a day. Who is he, Homeland Security? Right. Okay, so the Homeland Security guy went down there for a day. Hillary Clinton decided to stay in Martha's Vineyard for her husband's 70th birthday party. Obama continued his vacation in Martha's Vineyard, getting in his 10th round of golf. Did you see the photo mock-up that Drudge posted? This is one of the greatest, if of all times. There's a little Beamer station wagon that's practically flooded, completely flooded, along with a bunch of other cars in Louisiana, and Obama is on the roof hitting a chip shot of the BMW on his way to Louisiana. It is just, this is the kind, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to make fun of leftists. You're not supposed to laugh at them. They don't have any sense of humor where this stuff is concerned. And it was fantastic. So Trump goes down to Louisiana and actually helped with the relief efforts. And there were people down there saying, oh, we knew you'd come. We knew you would come to help us. We were hoping you would come. CNN says Trump got there too soon. The people of Louisiana, the officials of Louisiana, they're not ready for any of this yet. They need another week of suffering before they're... they need another week of suffering before they're ready for the logistics necessary to accommodate Obama. Obama was supposed to go in there tomorrow. He's coming back from Martha's, playing another round of golf today. Supposed to go down there tomorrow. Now I'm told he might not get down there till Thursday. There doesn't seem to be any outrage. And again, people ask me frequently, Rush, why is there no outrage within the general population over X move by Obama or something Obama didn't do? And the retort is, well, nobody knows. You and I know that he hasn't gone. We follow it. But the low information crowd, which everybody's waiting to get mad. I mean, when we talk about when are people getting outraged, let's admit it, we're talking about people who they're not daily followers in depth of political things. But how can they not know this? How can people not know Obama hasn't gone to Louisiana? Maybe because Kanye West hasn't gone on a rant about it. Maybe because Kim Kardashian hasn't gone on a rant about it. Barbara Streisand's ticked off, but only at Siri. You heard about this? Barbara Streisand's mad, not at Obama not going down to Louisiana. She's mad that Siri mispronounces her name. Well, this is incredible. Barbara Streisand was on NPR, and they got it to talking about, I don't know how it even came up. But she started complaining that Siri isn't any good because it mispronounces her name. It calls her Streisand instead of Streisand. The soft S is pronounced as a Z by Siri. So she said she called the head of Apple. That'd be Tim Cook. And Tim Cook said, okay, I personally will fix it. We're going to put out an update to iOS 10 on September 30th, and we will fix the way Siri pronounces your name. Now, a couple of things. Barbara Streisand can fix the way Siri pronounces her name on her iPhone or iPad right now, and so can you. You can go to your phone, you can call up Siri and tell it how to pronounce your name. Just say, my name is pronounced X. You can tell Siri, please call me Superstar. Please call me what, and Siri will refer to you as that from now on. It's a server-side update. Tim Cook doesn't have to go in and issue a software update to change the way Siri pronounces words. They can do that on the Siri server side. So I don't know what she's talking about. Besides iOS 10 update on September 30th, if there is one, it would be a patch, because iOS 10 is going to come out around September. I'm guessing 15th or 16th, something in there. And if they come out with a thing on September 30th, it'd be 10.0.1 or some little patch. But there's no reason to think Streisand knows what she's talking about. Anyway, that's what she's upset about. Is the way Siri. You didn't know you could change the way Siri pronounces your name. All you got to do is just call Siri up, my name, or any name. Like if let's say that you have a friend with a name that you want to tell Siri to text. How many people know you can do this? You call up Siri and say, hey, Siri, send a text. No. Hey, Siri, send a message to my wife. If on your contact card you list or on your wife's contact card in your contacts app, you list her as your spouse, then Siri will know. If you have a friend with a weirdly pronounced name, that's because it's your phone. It's asking you what your wife's name is. You don't have a wife, so but you can say whatever you want to say there. But if it's a contact card in your contacts app, then Siri will forever know that whoever that contact is your wife. But all you have to do is, if you've got a friend with a weird pronouncing name that you or it's hard to pronounce, or it doesn't pronounce the way it's spelled, you can simply tell Siri how the name is pronounced, and she will know from then on out. The Streisand doesn't need an update for this. So anyway, all of this talk about Trump to Louisiana, and the drive-bys are saying he doesn't mean it. He just tried to take advantage of Obama not being there. There's nothing Trump can do. Trump doesn't really mean it anyway, and he doesn't. You know what all of these things that are never, ever said. When a Democrat goes to the sign of when the Clintons go to Haiti, anybody say, well, he can't do anything. What are the Clintons going to do? Except find a way to get rich off of it, frankly, is what the Clintons do. So the drive-bys are saying Trump doesn't mean it. There's not very much he can do. All he's going to do is gum up the logistics because it's too early. Local authorities don't want people down there. But they never, ever. In fact, the Washington Post, did you hear this? Did you hear this excuse they gave for Obama not going there? Obama has long opposed the theatrical aspects of politics. Oh, yeah. Obama knows this is just a photo op. There's nothing he can really do. Obama can't pass out enough goods to help people. There's nothing Obama can do. There's nothing any single person can do in terms of actually helping people rebound from the disaster. There's nothing tangible. And Obama knows this because he's so much smarter than all the rest of us. And he knows that all it is a photo op. All it is cheap theatrics. And, of course, Obama, he has no interest in that. Right? The guy who gave his acceptance speech in 2008 in front of a bunch of styrofoamed Greek columns. Barack Obama, who wanted to give a speech at the Brandenburg Gate in Germany. Barack Obama is above the theatrical nature of politics. The lengths they go to cover for Obama. It's clear he doesn't care. Now, let me say something else here, though, for just 1 second about this. These presidential visits to disaster areas, in one sense, they are misrepresentatious or misrepresentative, let me say it that way, because there really isn't, other than maybe providing some uplifting inspiration or tangible evidence that there is concern from the highest levels and that help is on the way. There's nothing really a single individual can do. But as conservatives, let me ask you, are you a little troubled by the fact that anytime there's a disaster anywhere, that the place can't heal, the situation cannot possibly get better unless somebody from the government shows up? I have been not nervous, dubious of this, because it's always the Democrats always end up getting credit for this kind of thing. It plays into their great intentions, their big hearts, how much they care. But it's like every other thing that big government does. They don't do anything. It doesn't really matter, except they end up being credited and promoted as having great intentions, big hearts, huge compassion. So here Trump goes down and actually helps pass out some relief supplies, and he gets trashed as being insincere, or he's trying to capitalize on a natural disaster. It's beneath him. He shouldn't be there. He's not president anyway. What does he think he's doing? So it's just classic. No matter what a conservative or Republican attempts to do in the area of good works, particularly in a campaign, the drive-by media is going to be all in to blow it up and destroy it. And, of course, we've got examples of hypocrisy that are just exploding here. Barack Obama in 2005, whenever Hurricane Katrina hit, he was Senator Barack Obama at the time, just gave George W. Bush hell for not going down to New Orleans. Just reamed him a new one for not caring enough to go to New Orleans and show solidarity with those whose lives had been turned upside down because of Hurricane Katrina. To the audio sound bites. This is September 6, 2005. This is on the floor of the Senate. Barack Hussein O., who stayed in Martha's Vineyard the entire time of this flood and is still there playing golf.
I can say from personal experience over the last week how frustrating it has been, how unconscionable it has been to be unable to find somebody in charge so that we can get medical supplies, doctors, nurses, and other supplies down to the affected areas quickly enough. If there's any bright light that's come out of this disaster, it's the degree to which ordinary Americans have responded with speed and determination, even as their government has responded with what I consider to be unconscionable ineptitude.
There you go, unconscionable ineptitude. George W. Bush nowhere to be found other than at 10,000 feet, flying over the place, looking out the window of Air Force One. How insensitive, how uncaring. Barack Hussein Obama ripping into the government and begrudgingly praising the people on the ground for actually fixing and addressing their own problems. But he wasn't through. The campaign trail of 2008, here's Obama once again criticizing Bush's flyover of the disaster area at Katrina. Bush was not playing golf while people died. Bush was not on Martha's Vineyard hobnobbing with the swells. He was not in any way ingratiating himself with the elites as Obama was. But here we go again.
When the people of New Orleans and the Gulf Coast extended their hand for help, help was not there. When people looked up from the rooftops, for too long they saw an empty sky. When the winds blew and the floodwaters came, we learned that for all of our wealth and our power, something wasn't right with America. We can talk about what happened for a few days in 2005, and we should. We can talk about levees that couldn't hold, about a FEMA that seemed not just incompetent, but paralyzed and powerless, about a president who only saw the people from the window of an airplane instead of down here on the ground trying to provide comfort and aid.
Oh, yeah, so people love that. And here, that same guy could not be dragged off the golf course, doesn't care enough. Where is the similar outrage among the American people? Screw the media. We know the media is not going to express. Where is the outrage? Where are the American people angry? Can't find it, don't see it, don't understand it. Obama stays on Martha's, and of course Hillary, she can't even be bothered. She's got to hang in at Bill's 70th birthday party, because if she didn't, who knows what kind of women would show up. We'll get into this in a little bit more detail as the program unfolds, but one of the many things Trump did, series of speeches recently, is make an appeal to African-American voters. Now, this is something that Republicans have been urging Republican leaders to do frequently. It's a political thing rooted in the fact that if the Democrats could just be forced to lose 10% of the African-American vote, that it would seriously damage the Democrats' presidential aspirations, because they routinely get 90 to 93% of the African-American vote, and it's assumed that there's nothing to be done about it. But yet there are often calls, and have been for decades, for Republicans to make an appeal. And there have been several. Jack Kemp, Enterprise Zones, actually went to urban neighborhoods to pitch various plans or proposals that would facilitate the building and creation of black small businesses, selling entrepreneurism, and so forth. And there have been others that have made efforts to convince African Americans that they're wasting their vote with the Democrat Party. I don't recall anybody doing it the way Trump is doing it. The way Trump is doing it is to just look at them and say, what have you been getting for it? Now, I'm going to use my own words to convey the same message that Trump tried to get across, which is, you have been voting for the Democrat Party for 50 years. You have, every 4 years, voiced the same complaints, the same injustices, the same racism, the same unfairness, the same stacked deck. And yet, after all of these years and after all these Democrats being elected, you still complain about the same things. And your life circumstances certainly haven't improved. Look at black teenage unemployment. Look at black adult unemployment. So Trump mentions all this in his own way. He says, what have you got to lose by voting for me? Because how much worse can it get? It's an intriguing appeal, and I think it's effective by virtue of the Democrat media reaction to it. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations daily. Rush Limbaugh, your bulwark, your guiding light. Here at 800-282-2882. I like the way Trump made his pitch for African-American votes, and I'll tell you it's effective. And the reason I know it's effective is not because of anything I've heard from the African-American community. I've rather heard and read media reaction to it. They are loaded for bear. They are outraged that Trump would make an appeal to African-American voters. And then you know what I saw? I wish I would have printed this out. I was really hoovering news. I was trying to make up. I've been off the grid for a couple days. And this was Saturday, and I forget where I saw this. It's not necessary to anybody go out and find it. A series of stories, there might have been 2 stories, written by drive-by reporters trying to make the case that, hey, life in America isn't that bad for African Americans. And I said, well, this is new. Seems to me that every bit of reporting on African American is that it's one of the worst things that could happen to you is to be black in America. And that's been the tenor of the coverage of African American news and stories my entire life. Filled with sympathy and sorrow and the discrimination and the racism and the historical precedents of slavery and all these horrible, rotten things that America is guilty of, making it practically impossible to be African American in America. Trump comes out and makes a direct appeal to them, and then they just do a 180 and start saying, well, black unemployment's not that bad. And they start citing middle-class income figures, home ownership statistics to try to indicate that, hey, it isn't that bad for African Americans. Isn't this fascinating? Where's this story been for 50 years? Life for African Americans in America. Not bad at all. You've never seen that until Trump makes his pitch. And what he said is, what the hell do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose? And by the way, these are not things he's made up. These are statistical truths, and they oftentimes are complaints that you actually hear from the mouths of African-American leaders like the Reverend Jackson or Al Sharpton. I mean, they're the ones promulgating this stuff. They're the ones that need there to be this perception that life for African Americans is the dregs. And, of course, the reason for that is racism and bigotry and discrimination, thereby needing the race industry to defend these African Americans against this onslaught of unfairness that is intrinsically baked into the United States of America's existence. And then Trump comes along, and I think it's a reasonable appeal. Now, what Trump didn't say that I think is implied here when he says you're living in poverty, your schools are no good, you have no jobs, 58% of your youth is unemployed. He talks about immigration. That's not going to help any of these circumstances with all these illegal immigrants and refugees pouring into the country. And then the Democrats turning their favorites, the attention on favorites, new favorites such as gays and lesbians and bisexual transgenders and so forth, taking the African-American vote for granted. But the point is that the implied message of what Trump says is that the circumstances that blacks and their leaders complain about haven't changed. In fact, you could possibly accurately say that there's more anger in America today than there was 10 years ago, certainly more than there was 8 years ago. There is more anger in this country than there was 8 years ago. There hasn't been any resolution of that. There hasn't been any unity. There hasn't been any softening of tensions, relaxing of tensions. It's gotten worse. Exact opposite what people hoped would result from electing the first African-American president, Barack Hussein. So the implied question is, you've been voting for the Democrat Party your entire life and for the entire life of your grandparents, and you're still complaining about the same things, and you're right. You're still living in poverty. Inner city schools are the dregs. Unemployment, African-American unemployment, is double or triple what the national rate is. And it's 58% for youth African-Americans. So where is all of this improvement? Where are the results of the Democrat Party looking out for you? Thus the question, what the hell do you have to lose? I have always thought an appeal like that would work. I've never heard that appeal. The appeals that I have seen made by Republicans, I mean, they're good, they're admirable. I mean, they do contain and consist of personal outreach. I mean, Jack Kemp actually went out to African-American neighborhoods all over the country and pitched his enterprise zones, which was basically a government program designed to promote black entrepreneurism, leading to black small businesses, leading to black independence. Because that was the objective. I mean, the conservative Republican objective is independence from government for everybody, not dependence on government. The message is that dependence on government has led to perpetual poverty. Dependence on government has led, I mean, who's running the schools? Who runs all of these cities with all of these dilapidated schools and dilapidated city services? Who's been running them for years? It's a legitimate pitch. It is a legitimate outreach. Needs to be made more than once. And, of course, each time it's made, the media is going to savage Trump and savage the effort. And they're going to fact-check it, and they're going to report that Trump is lying about how horrible circumstances are for African Americans. But it's this very media which has been telling us this story for all 50 years about how impossible life for blacks in America is, and how it's continually getting worse, how racism is getting worse, discrimination is getting worse, white privilege is now, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where white students on college campus have been so guilted. They have been ladled with so much guilt over being white that they are suggesting it would be wrong to have white roommates. They don't want that because there's too much white privilege. They have benefited unfairly. They feel appropriately guilty. All of this has been done by the drive-by media and the professors, the entire liberal culture, spreading this word. So I find it fascinating that when Trump makes his pitch, the media comes out and immediately starts reporting stories. Hey, it's okay in the black communities. Life is okay for African Americans. It isn't nearly as bad as Trump said. Well, you can't have it both ways. So we'll see. This presidential campaign is unlike anything anybody has seen, and it's really hard to handicap. I also saw something else that I think this was Friday, as I was flying back home from my 2-day business trip. I think it was Friday. Dana Perino was telling Mr. Snerdley, did you see this? You didn't see it. It was on the 5, I think. Or it might have been a show on Fox where she was a guest analyst or commentator. But she delivered a commentary, or she made a statement that she just looked really in pain. It looked like the last thing she wanted to say. And what she told people was, if you think the polls are wrong, they're not. The polls are right. And you had better get with the program and understand it and admit it. Otherwise, you're lying to yourself. She said, I did the same thing back in 2012. I thought the polls were undersampled of Republicans, oversampled Democrats. I thought everything was wrong. I thought Romney was going to win by 6 points at least. I thought the polls had it all wrong for a host of reasons, and the polls ended up being dead on right. And I'm never doing that again. I am never going to look at polling data and automatically throw it out, particularly when you've got 34, 35 polls right now that show a Hillary victory of one size or another. She said the polls are not wrong. And she looked at the camera and said, I will never lie to you. I can't lie to you now. And you could tell she was uncomfortable with it because the assumption was that her audience doesn't want to hear this. I mean, she's on Fox News. And the assumption in her heart, I'm sure, was the audience wants to hear every day, these polls are wrong. You don't fall for it. You keep your chin up. Keep thinking positive. We're going to show everybody. She couldn't do that anymore, she said. She's got to the polls are right. It's not looking good. Well, there is movement in the polls, folks. And even old Nate Silver at 538 is saying this thing's not over yet. Trump is beginning to trend in the right direction. Other poll analysts are pointing this out as well, but then asking, is it too late for this? Is there enough time? Can Trump continue this trend? Can Trump continue to tighten the race? And then there are a couple of polls that show Trump up. That new LA Times poll done with USC has Trump up after being down by 3. Now, this is the poll the week of the Democrat convention. Trump was up 7, lost that lead through the Democrat convention in a week and a half after. Then it tied, and Hillary went ahead by 3 in that poll. Now Trump's back up by half point. This is the poll that has 3,000 people, 400 of whom never change. And they take the poll every day, report the results at midnight every night on the left coast, so it's 3 a.m. Eastern time when they update it. And Trump's back in the lead by a half point or a point. There's a Rasmussen poll, a couple others, I think, that have Trump up anywhere from 1 to 3 points. But the vast majority still have Hillary winning. And it's fast. She's not doing anything. Hillary's not going on TV. She's not doing any campaign appearances. But it is fast. They're almost panicked in the Hillary camp about fundraising. They're sending out fundraising letters as though they're in the middle of a crisis. It's weird. But you know what? It's clear, folks. You've got the Democrats. There's stories in the Washington Post. Hillary's already starting to work on her presidential agenda. Hillary's donors and Hillary's campaign advisors and Hillary's potential cabinet members all getting together and starting to plan out the presidential agenda. They've got it in their minds. It's over. They have it won. And the way they're going to make sure it stays won is Hillary is going to hibernate. She's not going to show up because they know the more she shows up, the greater the chance are her poll numbers will decline. So she's not going to do a press conference. She's not going to do rallies. She doesn't have to. The media is her campaign. The media destroys Donald Trump for her every day, free. She doesn't have to spend any money. Of course, she's going to. She is, and she's raising money. But the media is her campaign. The New York Times, ABC, CBS, NBC, something that pointed out here weeks ago. Hillary doesn't have to do anything. Her campaign is the American mainstream media. Quick time out, back with more in a moment. Don't go away. By the way, one more thing on Trump's appeal to African-American voters. Hillary, of course, poo-pooed it, thought it was insane, stupidest thing she's ever seen. The drive-by media is suggesting, Washington Post, it's hard to imagine a much worse pitch that Donald Trump could have made for the black vote. Did you hear what CNN tweeted? Trump wants GOP to court black voters, then slams voting rights for felons. Now, you might not notice anything about that if you race through that, if you just read that headline. But what does this headline actually indicate? What does it show? That in the eyes of CNN, all felons happen to be black. So where is the racism here? Trump wants GOP to court black voters and then slams voting rights for felons. So CNN is attempting to say Trump's lying or Trump's a hypocrite, because over here, Trump is saying, hey, let's make a pitch and get the African-American vote. And then he wants to deny felons the right to vote. Well, in the eyes of CNN, it must be that all felons are black. It's not Trump that said it. That's CNN's reaction. Of course, others drive-by picked that up and ran with it. Once again, illustrating that the racism in this country is institutionally found on the left. That's who look at people and judge them by the color of their skin or their sexual orientation. It's just amazing. Anyway, let's start on the phones here so we get that done. Columbus, Ohio first. Mark, great to have you. You're welcome and hi. I guess you're not there. Our phone's working. Okay, Mark's not there, so okay, we'll try Mike in Lansing, Michigan. Hello, sir. You there?
I was at the Trump rally in Diamonddale. There were blacks in the audience, and the mile walk between the parking space and the sports complex, there were blacks selling all sorts of Trump stuff, one end to the other, and everyone was happy. The people in the audience, for what Trump had said to the blacks, were in cheers and happy to hear it. Because if you go to Detroit, that's exactly what you see, is the blacks who are being screwed by the Democrat Party for the last 50 years at least. And they have no voice at all in their futures at all.
So let me say, you're talking in Lansing and in Detroit, you're seeing a lot of African-American support for Trump.
There were people, not in the cities itself. I don't know that. But I'm just saying what I saw when I was at the rally, that the people outside were happy. The people in the audience, of about 4,000 people, were happy with what Trump said in every point he made. And when I was in Detroit, the white people left the city because there were no jobs, and the people who were left have no jobs, and the schools, as you already know nationally, are in the tank, and the education department is doing nothing to change that. And the Democrats and the blacks are the ones who are suffering from it in Detroit and in Lansing as well.
Yes, but it's the Democrats keep getting elected there. That's the point here. Well, I misunderstood. I thought Anyway, let me take a break here, folks. We'll do that and be back in just a second. Don't go away. Yeah, we'll get into that. Trump and his change of tone. And get your reaction to that. Also this, Washington Post, the FBI's uncovered tens of thousands more documents in the Hillary Clinton email probe, the year-long investigation into her private email. And how about trying to blame it on Colin Powell? And how about Colin Powell coming back and saying they're trying to pin this on me rather than taking the heat for her? Wow. Back in just a second, folks. Don't go away.
Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Okay, I'm going to ask the question again. I asked a question yesterday. It needs to be asked a lot. As we keep hearing even today with the Clinton Family Foundation, what a great, great body of work they do there. There's nothing to see there. There's nothing to see. All this interaction between the Clinton Foundation and State Department, then just a bunch of people requesting access. I mean, that's not any big deal. What's the big deal wanting access? That's not favors. I mean, the drive-bys are filled with that theme today. No, nobody sought favors. They just wanted access. Access is the favor. For crying out loud, what's so hard about this? Access, when you are an entity, a country, an individual, a member of Evil Corp, wherever you are, and Hillary Clinton's a Secretary of State, and you want to reach her, and you know if you call the Secretary of State, that line, you call the Department of State, they're not going to put you through. So what do? You call the Clinton Crime Family Foundation, and then Cheryl Mills gets hold of Huma Abedin Weiner, and Huma Abedin Weiner then tells Hillary, hey, such and such wants to talk to you. And they say, yeah, that happened, but that's just access. Access is the favor. And to think that no favors have been done or promised is absurd, but the drive-bys are trying to, it's just access, it's no big deal. It's the way of the world, they're saying. And it may well be, folks. I think it is. I think this is a perfect illustration of what being a member of the establishment gets you. This kind of access, this kind of favorable treatment, this kind of acceptance and the upper levels of power. Greetings, great to have you. El Rushbo. Here behind the golden EIB microphone, the telephone number 800-282-2882. The email address, again, it's a new one. It is lrushbo@eibnet.us. Hang on a minute here, folks. My microphone boom is the latest piece of equipment here on the Blitz. 1 second. There we go. I got it. Here's the question. If they do such good work over there at the Clinton Crime Family Foundation, why is the Clinton Foundation not offering any help, any aid, any money, any food, any cell phones to the devastated, dare I say, white population in Louisiana? Yeah, Obama's got it covered today after 10 or 11 rounds of golf. Obama's going down there today. Or is it Thursday that he's going? Supposed to be in there today. But okay, within the hour. Why didn't I should have suspected he would arrive during this program. Of course that's what they would do. Seriously. So Obama's got that covered? I mean, the Clinton Crime Family Foundation was all over Haiti. They were all, I think maybe they can't make any money in Louisiana. That's what the Clinton Crime Family Foundation's really all about, is securing donations, not making payouts. Anybody figured this out yet? You look at the payouts of the Clinton Crime Family Foundation, it's not much. The Clinton Crime Family Foundation is a way to support all of the members of the Clinton crime family and to have them travel around in the lap of luxury. But, I mean, we're hearing about what great charitable work is done there. We're hearing about how compassionate the Clinton Foundation is, and yet here's Louisiana with record flooding. You know, we know some people who have incurred some great damage down there. The fish god. We have a friend, Kathy and Steve Abernathy, used to be at Brennan's in New Orleans, and Steve's the fish god. I call him the fish god. He raised tilapia. And I went down, I visited the fish farm. I'd never been to a fish farm before, so I went down there. I landed in New Orleans, had to drive all the way across Lake Pontchartrain to get to the fish farm. And these tilapia, these giant circular tanks, and any time you would move, those fish would try to swim away from you. They could see you, and they were afraid of you. We weren't going to do anything to them except eat them later, which I guess they knew. And the fish god went on to tell me about how he genetically modified them and changed the sex so that he would have more female tilapia laying eggs so that there would be more hatched and more fish to sell. So when I found out he could change the sex of a tilapia, I started calling him the fish god. So anyway, they had some damage. The fish tanks didn't suffer any, but some of the buildings where their office supplies are housed had like 3 or 4 feet of water in them. And there's all kinds of people have had loss of home, and everything they have is gone. And they're largely white. And you know that skin color matters in this country more maybe than it ever has. And you know how everything has become politicized in this country. Some people don't want to acknowledge or admit that. But it has. But it's a late arrival for the U.S. government on the scene in Louisiana, no matter who goes. But I do think it's a relevant question to ask about, because how about if Hillary did order her foundation to go do some work in Louisiana? Imagine the photo op and the goodwill she could get out of that here in the midst of a presidential campaign, and they're seeking not to do it. And not just in Louisiana, but some other places too. And I think the reason is because they don't want to establish the precedent that the purpose of that foundation is to pay out a lot of money. You know, I don't know how many of you people have actually looked into establishing a foundation. Anybody can. Anybody can do it. And a lot of people who do it as a means of making bulk charitable donations for tax deduction purposes, in addition to whatever charitable work they want to do. But let me just use a round number here, and I'm going to be fairly close to how this works. Let's say you set up a foundation for $100,000. And if that's what you put into your foundation, you'll get to deduct $100,000 from your taxes that year at whatever your income tax rate is. But the kicker is this. You don't ever have to put any more money in it, but you can. And you can go out and ask people to donate to it. You can run golf tournaments, anything you want to have people donate to your foundation. The kicker, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, you only have to donate 10% a year from it to keep it qualified as a charity. So you can hoard all them. Now, theoretically, you can't use the money. Once you've put it in there, it's not yours anymore. The only way it can be spent is for travel and expenses of the employees of the foundation, if you want to hire some, which is what the Clintons have done, or donating it. But you can get a full tax deduction of whatever you fund that foundation that you've set up in a year. But you don't have to give it all away every year to get the deduction. You only have to give away 5 or 10%. It may not even be that much. And this is why I say the reason I'm guessing that the Clintons have not set this foundation up to be on site at every disaster is that they don't want to establish the idea that the purpose of their foundation is to deal with charities. They do it now and then, but that's not why they've set this up. Their charitable foundation is a Hoover. It is sucking things up. I mean, the Crown Prince of Bahrain and $32 million. We mentioned this yesterday, and people say, what could he possibly expect to get? Well, nothing from the foundation. But if Mrs. Clinton, either as Secretary of State or becomes president, well, then who knows? And that's what it's for. So the drive-bys running around saying, there's nothing to see here. All they're doing is providing access. There aren't any favors being done. The favor is the access. Great to have you with us, my friends. The question, again, needs to be asked, why is the Clinton Family Foundation not offering help, aid, money, food, cell phones to the devastated population of Louisiana? An accompanying story, Clinton rakes in $4 million while Louisiana drowns. This is the Daily Caller. Hillary Clinton has yet to set a date to visit Louisiana. which was recently devastated by historic flooding, but she managed to raise millions of dollars in campaign contributions over the weekend. She found time to go on Jimmy Kimmel's show, where she was, you ought to see the video. She's so stiff and unfunny. Like, Kimmel is talking, here's a classic joke that they set up, and she didn't blow it, but it's not executed well. So Kimmel asks her what it's like to be a grandmother. Oh, it's just wonderful. I don't know where I'd be without FaceTime. And Kimmel says, oh, FaceTime instead of emails. The audience busts out laughing. Hillary fakes like she's laughing. Oh, points at Kimmel. Oh, you're funny. Oh, you're... As though she's in on the joke. And the drive-bys are heralding this. They're saying Hillary's got the guts and the temerity going on there and has the ability to laugh at the circumstance. But again, we have to keep in mind how the low-information crowd, and it's the low-information crowd watching this show, how they see this. And they see this email thing being laughed about and made a joke of, and therefore can't be anything serious. Because Kimmel's audience... They're pretty sure that if this were a serious thing, Jimmy Kimmel would be treating it seriously. And he'd be trying to bore in there and get to the bottom of it. But he's laughing about it with her. So how big a deal can it be? And then if you go elsewhere, it's amazing. Folks, this is amazing. I still don't know how to take this. No matter where you go in the drive-by media today, yesterday, last week, you can find near paranoia about this in certain Democrat circles. You can find the Washington Post is paranoid about this. Like the Politico has a story that this email thing, State Department security, private servers, classified documents, there are leftists writing that they are worried this is going to hound her for the rest of her political life. That she's never going to be out from under this. That it's going to undercut her effectiveness, her integrity, her honesty. And yet, nothing's going to happen. Does anybody really even now think anything's going to happen? Okay, so the latest is Huma Abedin. Guess what we found out? Huma has been driving around with classified documents in the car. And she came across a sex toy store, get something for her husband. She got out. She left the stuff on the front seat. She left the classified documents on the front seat while going into the sex toy store. I'm making that part up. I don't know that she actually went to a sex toy store for her husband. But she went somewhere. It might have been to a Kinko's, which she might have thought was a sex toy store. It's actually a printing shop. She might have gone in there. Who knows? But she left the classified documents front seat, and she realized she called somebody. She says, you got to get over there and get them out of the front seat. You got to put them in the trunk of my car. Classified State Department documents on the front seat of the automobile being driven by Huma Wiener. Where she called. And it's still, there's nothing that's going to happen here. I can't see it happening. At least not in a legal, judicial sense. Whether this ends up actually affecting her in the polls or on Election Day remains to be seen. You know, there's so many confusing things out there. There's literally no energy in her campaign. She doesn't draw flies. She can't attract and hold a crowd whatsoever. And when people do show up, they're bored silly. When it's 95 degrees and every woman in the picture is wearing tank tops and shorts, Hillary is decked out like it's wintertime in Moscow. She's got her Nehru jacket, her Mao jacket on. She's got long slacks, practically gloves. I mean, it's the weirdest looking thing anyway. And always standing under an umbrella or a tent to shield herself from the sun. And yet, despite any, I mean, literally, folks, despite any evidence of her popularity, she is leading in the polls significantly. And then you go over and you look at Trump, and everywhere Trump goes, you can't get in. The people that do get in are having a raucous good time. There is excitement. Trump does performances. Everybody's excited and thrilled to be in there. There's lots of energy everywhere he goes. It is so big It is so exciting, it is so much fun that Hillary protesters show up and try to cause trouble. So you look at this, you look at one candidate who can't draw flies and is not even trying to anymore, doesn't even do rallies, hardly does anything in public, and when she does, nobody notices, and she's leading. And over here, the guy that looks like a rock star is losing in the polls. And people are out there scratching their heads over this. Not quite understanding it. Selena Zito in the New York Post, actually by way of the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. Great piece today that echoes some sentiments that I was making about Trump's crowd, his supporters, all the way back to last fall. And it dovetails with the observation Robert Costa made in the Washington Post 3 weeks ago about the Trump base possibly made up of a whole bunch of people who have never voted or haven't voted in a long time and therefore are never polled. And Robert Costa, Washington Post, saying this is the thing that concerns a lot of Democrats. How many of those people are early part of the Trump crowd, really excited, all jazz? How many of them have not voted maybe ever or only a couple times, may show up and vote? There's no way to find out. There's no way to poll them because polls are likely voters, registered voters, and they're not found. And then there's this, before we go to the break very quickly, UK independent women are genetically programmed to have affairs. Women are predisposed by their genetics to have affairs. The affairs are backup plans in case the guy with whom they're in a relationship with turns out to be a dud. It's all about procreation. It's all about life. It's all about making sure that the species survives. This is in women's genes, and they have affairs as backup plans in case Prince Charming turns into Prince Adolfo. Mr. Snerdley, anybody you want to test the theory on? Now, lest anybody think that I'm being prurient here, let me just share it with you. Women are predisposed by their genetics. For those of you at Rio Linda, means it's built in. They are born with it. Women are predisposed by their genetics to have it. Means when they do it, you better not get mad at them because they can't help it. It's genetically programmed in there to have affairs as backup plans. What do you bet that this editor is a female? And what do you bet that whoever did the research is female? And what do you bet they're in an unhappy relationship or have always been? I mean, what would even spawn something like this? Who would go looking in the genetic code to find programmed to have affairs? And then the conclusion, why? Well, backup plans. Women need backup plans if their relationships fail, according to a research paper. And this research paper is from the University of Texas. Scientists at the University of Texas say they are challenging the assumption that humans have evolved to have monogamous relationships. The University of Texas research team has put forward the mate switching hypothesis. That's what it's called, the mate switching hypothesis, which says that human beings have evolved to keep testing their relationships and looking for better long-term options. The senior author of the research actually is a guy. Well, that makes sense now that I think about it. His name is Dr. David Buss. And he told the Sunday Times of London that lifelong monogamy does not characterize the primary mating patterns of humans. Breaking up with one partner and mating with another may more accurately characterize the common, maybe even the primary, mating strategy of humans. For our distant ancestors, when disease, poor diet, and minimal health care meant that few people lived past 30, looking for a more suitable partner was necessary. So you see, it's all in there. It's all in the genetic code. It's all built in. It must happen in order for the species to survive. As I say, anybody you're thinking you want to test this theory on, you might now have it open. Okay, then there's one more thing here in this story of the University of Texas. It's actually in the UK Independent. about women being genetically programmed to have affairs. It also points out there's another measure that the researchers have, and that is that men with ring fingers longer than their index fingers are also predisposed to be promiscuous. Those with ring fingers that are the same size are predisposed to monogamy. I imagine you're all measuring about now, so let me see. Let's see. Both of them have longer ring fingers than their indexes. So's mine. I think this may be kind of flummery here because I bet everybody's is. I'll bet everybody's ring finger's longer than their index finger. It may be part of the Well, you're a woman. We're talking here about men. Your genes already have you established as having an affair. We're now talking about men and whether they're predisposed to do it. Okay, to the phones. We're going to start here with Brad in upstate New York. It's great to have you on the program, sir. Hello. Brad, are you there? Brad in upstate New York, testing. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Are you there? He is not there. Doesn't matter. He was only going to be a foil for what I actually wanted to talk about. Subject line, and it's called Tuckle. He's not. He is there. After I've said he was nothing more than a foil, he is there. Are you, Brad? Are you there?
I am. I'm measuring my fingers.
Okay. Well, you were there probably on a long. We probably had a tech screw up in here that nobody knew until. Anyway, so it says here that you were taking a long vacation through rural America. What happened?
Instead of getting on the I-95, we took 2-lane roads all the way to Myrtle Beach, and it took us 3 days instead of 12 hours. But we saw Trump signs everywhere. Now, I listen to you religiously. My wife never does, but she listens to me.
Yeah, now, wait. Where did you specifically see the Trump signs?
People's yards. A lot of people's yards.
In cities, in rural areas, where did you see them?
Rural towns, many
Yes.
rural towns. So we went through Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, all on two-lane roads except for the Chesapeake Bay. And
let me ask you this. Were you shocked?
I'm not. I use that as proof. I told my wife, I said, this is why Trump's going to win. This is where the base is. If they get out of their house and go vote, these are the people who don't get polled, and that's why the media doesn't tell us this.
Not only do they not get polled, they are routinely impugned and made fun of and laughed at.
Yes, they're ignored.
And ignored. Exactly right.
So last night her phone rang, and she said, who is this? And they said it again, and she said, yes, I'll answer your questions. And it went on for 45 minutes, and it was a political poll. And not only do I not know anybody in my 63 years who's ever been polled, there it is. My wife gets polled. I wanted to yank the phone out of her hand and answer the questions myself, but I was so proud of her.
Well, who was it? What polling unit was it? Do you remember?
I don't know that, but they were tied to one of our local Republican senators, George Amador, and they were asking Trump versus Hillary questions and Amador versus his opponent questions.
Okay, so it was a New York. Well, yeah, okay, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's the reason that I wanted to take your call and use you as a foil to transition to another story here is I've got this column by Selena Zito, and the headline, Stumped by Trump's Success, Take a Drive Outside U.S. Cities. If you don't understand Trump's success, if you're one of these people that doesn't get this, take a drive, leave the city, go outside the city and drive around and see what you see. I remember making this point all last fall in trying to explain to people who Trump supporters were and what they found exciting about him and what about what he was saying they supported. Everybody was trying to figure it out last fall. It didn't make sense to anybody. In the establishment, in the political circles of New York and Boston and Washington, it didn't make sense because to them, what Trump was saying should have disqualified him. He should have been disqualified after he made his opening statement after getting off the escalator on June 16th. And then he should have been disqualified after he said what he said about McCain. And so all of these experts are pulling their hair out, trying to understand this. And they're not getting even close. And I spent all last fall and winter trying to explain it to them. So this column by Selena Zito, it buttresses exactly, Brad, what you saw. Let me give you some highlights here. If you drive anywhere in Pennsylvania, from the turnpike to the old U.S. routes to the dirt roads connecting small towns like Hooversville with bigger small towns like Somerset, you might conclude that Donald Trump is ahead in Pennsylvania by double digits. Large signs, small signs, homemade signs, signs that wrap around barns, signs that go from one end of a fence to another dot the landscape. And they dot the landscape with such frequency that if you were playing the old-fashioned road trip game of counting cows, you would hit 100 in just one small town like this one, meaning 100 Trump signs. In Ruffsdale, Pennsylvania, I'm pretty sure I saw more than 100 Trump signs, writes Selena Zito. She writes for the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review, by the way. It's as if people here have not turned on the television to hear pundits drone on and on about how badly Trump is losing in Pennsylvania. And it's not just visual. In interview after interview, in all corners of the state, I found that Trump's support across the ideological spectrum remains strong. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, people who've not voted in presidential elections for years, and they have not wavered in their support. Two components of these voters' answers and profiles remain consistent. They are middle class, and they do not live in a big city. They are suburban to rural, and they are not poor, an element that I found fascinating until a Gallup survey last week confirmed that what I've gathered in interviews is more than just freakishly anecdotal. Now, let me pause in this to point something out. If you do pay attention to the drive-bys, if you watch the news, cable news, I don't care what network, I don't care what you watch or read, what you're going to hear from mainstream media types about Trump supporters is that they are almost all white, they're almost all poor, many of them are unemployed, and they do not have any college education. That's how Trump supporters are at present characterized. And that is wrong. That is not who there may be some in that group that are Trump supporters, but Trump supporters do have college education. Some of them are highly intelligent, educated. Some of them are doing quite well financially. They're not all poor. They're not all stupid. In other words, the drive-bys want you to think that Trump's support base is deliverance. And they're doing this on purpose. So Selena Zito travels around Pennsylvania and says, gosh, this does not dovetail at all. And she says it's overwhelming. And keep in mind, these are people who have not voted in presidential elections in years. And don't forget Robert Costa in the Washington Post telling Charlie Rose how scared he is that these are the people make up the Trump base, and they're not polled because they're not likely voters. They're not registered voters because they haven't shown up to vote in a long time. And so there's 70% of the population that thinks that the country's headed in the wrong direction, and 50% of the population doesn't vote. And he's speculating that if these people show up in any significant numbers at all, it'll be a shock and total surprise, and it'll totally blow the polling out the window. So Miss Zito here is claiming she's found this, but she's buttressing what she found. This is anecdotal. Her report, what she found, all the Trump signs, who the people who put them out are, the supporters of Trump that she spoke to. Nothing scientific about the way she gathered the information. It's called anecdotal. Then she came across a Gallup survey last week that confirmed what she found anecdotally. And this Gallup survey is incredible. The Gallup analysis that she came across is based on 87,000 interviews. Now, it's not a presidential poll, because Gallup doesn't do presidential polls anymore because they haven't gotten close enough in recent polls, so they pulled out. So they survey other things. An 87,000 sample. 87,000 interviews over the past year. And the analysis shows that while economic anxiety and Trump's appeal are intertwined, his supporters, for the most part, do not make less than average Americans. And they are less likely to be unemployed, meaning the picture the drive-bys are painting of the average Trump supporter is all wrong. And it's not just what she saw on her trip through Pennsylvania, but the Gallup survey confirms it. Trump supporters, for the most part, make just as much or more as the average American. Of course, you have throughout New York and Washington, those salaries are not normal because of the demographics and the makeup of those two cities. The study from Gallup backs up what many of her interviews across Pennsylvania have found, and that is that these people supporting Trump are more concerned about their children and their grandchildren. And boy, do I don't care who I run into that's a Trump supporter. In fact, I can add something to that. No matter who I run into that doesn't like Hillary, so not everybody's a Trump supporter that doesn't like Hillary. A lot of people don't like Hillary. The people that don't want the Democrats, the people that don't want Hillary, whether they're for Trump or somebody else, are concerned about their children and grandchildren because the country is headed in the wrong direction. Now, while Trump supporters in Pennsylvania do happen to be overwhelmingly white, their support has little to do with race. It has more to do with a perceived loss of power. That's another thing the drive-bys are lying to us about. They're painting the average Trump supporter as a white, poor, uneducated, racist bigot. The Gallup survey of 87,000 people doesn't show this at all. It shows people that are not concerned with race. They're concerned with power and their loss of it. And I will explain what that means right after this. And we're back. Great to have you, El Rush Limbaugh, behind the golden EIB microphone. Okay, country class people, as opposed to ruling class. Selena Zito here in the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, when she says that the people that support Trump has nothing to do with race, has a lot to do with the perceived loss of power. It's not power in the way of Washington or Wall Street, not power in the sense of boardrooms, but power in the sense that these people have and see a diminishing respect for them and their ways of life, their work ethic, and their tendency to not be mobile. In other words, these people, here's the truth of this, folks. I think this really gets to the nub of it. 30 years ago, people like this determined the country's standards in entertainment, in music, in food, in clothing, in politics, in personal values. And then the blue laws went to hell, and that opened the floodgates. And this is not an exaggeration to say that people like Selena Gomez found, these Trump supporters, they determined what the standards were in entertainment. It was you didn't say or express cuss words on TV because these people wouldn't watch if you did, and they would turn it off. And they represented the majority of thinking in the country. Politics, personal values, the whole thing. They used to be the backbone of America in many regards. Now, the things they believe in are routinely laughed at. The things they believe in are made fun of in movies, in books, in television shows. They are mocked. They are called racist and bigots. And it is in this sense that they feel they are losing their power. It's not so much power as it is respect and dignity. The places where they live lack economic opportunities for the next generation. They know that their children or grandchildren will never experience the comfortable situations they had growing up because all that's out the window now. These Trump supporters are not the kind you find on Twitter saying dumb or racist things. Many of them don't even have the time or the patience to engage in social media. They are too busy working. They're too busy living life in real time. Call them the silent majority, the silent number, whatever. And we're going to find out in November just how many of them there are. We're going to find out in November. How many of them show up and vote? We're going to find out a lot of things in November, because I guarantee you these people are not being polled. They're not being reached. And in an even greater sense, the people responsible for polling and the editors and producers of major media networks, they're not interested in these people. These people are passé. These people are the bitter clingers now. These people are the old-fashioned fuddy-duddies who modernity has passed by. And so nobody's interested in their opinions. Nobody cares what they think of the latest movie. Nobody cares what they think of music today. Nobody cares what they think of fashion. They don't register to vote. They haven't voted much for a whole bunch of reasons rooted in disenfranchisement, so they are out there lurking. And every presidential year comes along and they stay home because it's more of the same. They don't have a political party. The Tea Party maybe was a vessel for them. But Trump has come along and has ignited them. Trump has come along and re-energized them. And that's who they are. And they are not the filthy swill and swine on Twitter. They are not causing disruptions at rallies. They're not malcontents and protesters starting fights at Hillary events or any of that. They don't do any of that. So we'll find out. These are voters intellectually offended watching Obamacare crumble because they knew 6 years ago what it was. They knew it was government overreach. They never expected it to work. Nobody listened to them when they told them that it wouldn't. They're the same people who wonder why Obama hasn't decided to stop playing golf for just a day and go to Louisiana. So it's a great piece. We'll link to it at rushlimbaugh.com. And I'm sure it'll be up there. Coco here. Well, it's Coco Jr. today, but Coco Jr.'s fast. So it'll be up probably before I'm even through saying this. Back in a sec. Okay, here you go, folks. The head honcho of the European Union, Jean-Claude Juncker, sure he doesn't pronounce it that way, but I'm going to, says that borders are the worst invention ever. Head honcho, European Union, Jean-Claude Juncker, borders are the worst invention ever. Globalists on the march. I am Rush Limbaugh. I am America's real anchorman, my friends. I'm America's truth detector. I am America's fact checker. And I am a doctor of democracy. It's great to have you here at the Limbaugh Institute. The telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbaugh@eibnet.us. It's a new email address. Don't use the old one. You'll end up in the ether. It's lrushbaugh@eibnet.us. Okay, yesterday on this program, I happened to praise an aspect of Donald Trump's speech, one of his speeches over the weekend, in which he appeared to be reaching out to African Americans. Now, the audience for that speech was largely white. And my reaction to what Trump said, I will admit today, I'm not going to try to run from this, I was supportive. I thought it was good. And then I ran across a lot of other people who thought Trump blew it, who thought it was insulting, who thought it was stupid, thought it was dumb, and that he wasn't even reaching out to African Americans. He was actually reaching out to white women. This was the theory. So what did Trump say? Well, this was the speech where Trump said to African Americans, what have you got to lose by voting for me? And then he characterized the way they live. And I happen to think it was okay because this is what we're all told. If you listen to Al Sharpton, if you listen to Jesse Jackson, if you listen to the Congressional Black Caucasians, if you listen to any interest group representing African Americans, what picture do they paint of life in America for African Americans? It's pretty bleak, right? I mean, the cops are wanting to shoot them all the time. They put them in jail all the time. They're unemployed. They can't get work. They're discriminated against. Perpetual racism. It's not a pretty picture, right? I've always heard this portrayed. I've always had life in America for blacks portrayed that way to one degree or another by black leaders. And it's all part of the way black leaders convince black voters to vote Democrat. If you vote Democrat, they're going to fix this stuff. If they vote Democrat, they're going to make sure there isn't any racism anymore. If you vote Democrats are going to protect you from the cops. The Democrats are going to protect you from evil corporations that won't hire you. The Democrats are going to protect you from the evil racists and the bigots. The Democrats are going to punish the evil racists and bigots. The Democrats are going to make sure you have work. The Democrats this, the Democrats that. You can't trust the Republicans, or Republicans don't like you. The Republicans are racist, bigots, sexist, not you, all that. That is what a large percentage of African Americans are told. That's what they think. That's how they're raised. And so Trump was, I thought, facing it head on. I was surprised to see so many conservatives, by the way. Now these are magazine and blog internet conservatives. I mean, they just roasted Trump. They just raked him over the coals. It was a demeaning appeal. It was negative. It was apocalyptic. And this is not the way to reach out to African Americans. This is not how you do it. And then they came along and said, and he wasn't even trying to reach out to blacks anyway. That they were saying Trump was very cynical, that what he was really doing was trying to make it seem that he cared about black people so as to soften the opinion of him that white women specifically have. This is what I picked up on. People, again, just people who were criticizing Trump's outreach to African Americans were saying, look, it wasn't even a black audience, it's a white audience. He wasn't really even speaking to blacks. He was trying to demonstrate to white women that he's actually a nice guy and he actually wants the best for everybody. And I thought, why do I think so differently about this? Why did the way I processed what Trump said so differently than people who think like I do in a lot of other areas, who disagreed profoundly with Trump and his approach and thought it was demeaning and counterproductive? And one of the reasons that what Trump said resonated with me is that I've always not dreamed, but I've always imagined if I were a candidate, a Republican conservative candidate running for office, and the effort required reaching out to African Americans, I've often asked, how would I do it? And I have even shared with you how I would do it over the course of the 29 years, 28 years, whatever it is we've been doing this program. And it's pretty close to what Trump did, except I would make sure that there were blacks in the audience when I did it. I say it frequently here as it is. And I put it in the form of questions. Okay, you're angry. And you're angry at, and list the things they're angry at. And I will base that on what I hear and what I see from actual African Americans and from their leaders. And they're angry at the cops. They're angry at the prison system. They're angry at the judicial system. They're angry at the housing market. They're angry at the job market. They don't think they get a fair shake. And I wouldn't disagree with them. I would simply ask, well, how come the people you've been voting for 50 years haven't changed any of this when they've been promising to every 4 years? And I would say, at some point, don't you think it's time to try something else? Because the people that you are investing all of your hopes and dreams seem to be failing big time. And I would say, seems to me that you're angrier today than you were 4 years ago. You're angrier than you were 8 years ago. So voting Democrat actually isn't working for you. And I would say that straight up, just as I am now. And I thought this is essentially, effectively, what Trump was doing when he said, what have you got to lose? What have you got to lose means, look, the way you are voting now to rectify some of these problems is obviously not working. How can it get any worse? What do you have to lose? To me, it made sense because it is how I would go about doing it. Then I find out that it is insulting to do that. I read that it's insulting, that it's demeaning, that it's counterproductive, that it will in no way work. And then I started reading how it's not that bad for African Americans. I said, what? I wish that were true. Don't misunderstand. But I'm confused. It's not that bad for African Americans. So Jesse Jackson's exaggerating? So Al Sharpton's exaggerating? Black Lives Matter, they're exaggerating? It's not as bad as Trump indicated. It's not as bad as what we're told every day. There isn't as much racism. There isn't as much discrimination. It's not that hard to get a job if you're African. It's not as bad. It may be the first time in my adult life that Democrats and leftists in the media wrote of life in African American America that it is not that bad. So I really, yesterday afternoon, last night, I did some soul searching. I wanted to understand how in the world could I be seeing this so differently than, well, I don't want to name any names. It's not about them. It's just about how in the world can I be seeing this so differently than people who I normally agree with on 70, 80% of other things. So then I asked myself, well, okay, do they have an inherent built-in hatred of Trump that no matter what he does, it's bad? And no matter how he goes about it, it's unprofessional and amateurish? Are they part of the never Trump crowd that no matter what he does, he can't succeed because he's not one of them and he's not sophisticated enough and he's not this or he's not that? And I come across this Selena Zito piece, which reaffirms my interpretation of a large percentage of the Trump base. I think they would think the same thing. They would. The point is that all the people that Selena Zito's writing about, people like me, we don't like all this racial strife. And this is the United States of America, and we don't want people mad at this country. We want them loving it like we do. And we want it working for everybody. We want the opportunity this country presents to be available to everybody. We don't want to exclude anybody. We're not class-oriented. We're not the kind of people say, well, you're not good enough for us. You're not good enough to live where we live. You're not good enough to be in the clubs we're in. That's not who we are. It may be who the elites are, but it's not who we are. I guarantee you the vast majority of people in this country don't like all this racial strife. They don't like what's happening to the police. They don't like the attitude that a lot of people have that America's a failure, that America's rooted in unfairness and it's unjust and immoral. It's the greatest country on earth. We want as many people as possible to see that. And a lot of us believe that what's holding people back is nothing more complicated than the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party doesn't want people to be self-reliant. The Democrat Party doesn't want people to be self-sufficient. They don't want them to be individualistic. They don't want them to be able to provide for themselves. The Democrat Party needs as many people as possible believing the deck is so stacked against them that they can't succeed unless the Democrat Party is working out for them. And yet that begets the question, well, why then is life not getting better for you? No matter who you are, black, white, Martian, you vote Democrat every 4 years. Why are you still mad? Why are you still complaining? They have power. They have power, gobs of power. They have been using extra constitutional power. Why aren't things getting any better? How come the Hillary Clinton campaign is basically made up of what's wrong after 8 years of her and her party running it? Why is this campaign not made up of things, how great things are now and how much better we're going to make them? Why is the Democrat campaign not that? Why is it never that? Why is every Democrat campaign rooted in detailing everything that's wrong, blaming Republicans for it, and then promising to fix it? And the fix never happens. And yet people keep voting for it. And that's when you get into Answers such as, well, they may be getting by on the fact that people think they're trying. They have their good intentions, and they have successfully destroyed the Republican brand so that no matter what Republicans say, they're not believed. But I really was scratching my head late yesterday afternoon, last night, trying to fix this or understand this, because I didn't see how it was demeaning. Maybe somebody can help me out here. I know we have a lot of African Americans in this audience. Maybe you can explain to me how it's demeaning to say, what have you got to lose? Because all I'm doing is listening to what I hear. I hear civil rights coalition leaders. I hear Jackson and Sharpton and Farrakhan. I don't care who I listen to them describe an absolute hellhole when they talk about life in America for African Americans. They regale us with all the racism, with all the bigotry, with all the discrimination and prejudice in the legal system, the cops, law enforcement, jobs. It's just a negative drumbeat. And they've been voting for people who've been promising to fix it for 50 years, and they're just as mad today as they were 50 years ago. But they're never mad at the people who do not come through. They're never mad at the people whose promises are never realized. So approaching them on that basis, hey, at some point, maybe you think it might be try a different approach if you want to improve things for yourself and your family and your kids. I mean, you look out across the country and you see a lot of success. You see a lot of successful people. You see... I mean, somebody's having it. Somebody's finding it. And it's not everybody that's got it pre-programmed by family connection or whatever. I mean, some people are stumbling into success. Why aren't you? I don't see how it's demeaning. But that's what they said it was when Trump talked about it. They said it was demeaning, it was insulting, it was insensitive. And yet it was close to how I would go about it if I were a candidate. Maybe this is an illustration of how I should never be a candidate. I don't really know that business, and I don't really know what it takes or what getting votes is all about. And it may be, because I'm not accustomed to selling things for support. So I don't know. Back in just a second. Rush Limbaugh, the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. Time to get back to the phones. We'll go to Chicago. Dave, great to have you. Glad you waited. Hello, sir.
Hi, Rush. Listen, the item on the genetics of women reminded me of a pet theory I've had for a lot of years, and that is that a lot of men are so dumb that they could be very, very happy in a relationship and cheat. You know, jeopardize a relationship by cheating, whereas I think most women who cheat are unhappy in the relationship. And,
wait a minute. Hold it. I didn't understand the first half of that. You think that dumb men can...
A lot of men. No, not dumb men. But, I mean, a lot of men are dumb enough. A lot of men are dumb enough that they would jeopardize a very happy relationship by cheating.
Okay, wait. No, hang on. Just wait. There are a lot of men dumb enough that are in a very happy relationship that they'll screw it up by having an affair anyway, despite the fact that they're happy.
Yes.
And that's what makes them dumb. Okay. And then women, but you think women who have affairs are doing it because they're unhappy.
Any areas. Okay. All right.
Right, but you think that women having affairs are doing it because they're unhappy. They're not happy.
A lot of them. Yeah, a lot of them. You know, you can't say everybody. You know, I think a lot of women who have affairs are unhappy in the relationship. Yes.
Well, that's basically what the researchers, University of Texas, say, that the affair is a backup plan.
Yeah.
The affair is a backstop if the primary relationship takes a dive,
right,
and goes south. Okay, so if men will have affairs even when they're in a happy relationship, what does that say? I mean, what's the...
I don't know. I'm not, you know, I think, obviously I've come to that over the years by watching Friends, you know.
Oh, so you know a lot of guys have had affairs then. You have a lot of anecdotal evidence on this.
Yes, I have. And watching on TV watching the politicians and the movie stars weeping as they've been caught in a relationship.
You got to throw. You can't. He cannot hear me. We can't. You got to throw Hollywood out. You can't compare what happens in business marriages to what happens in what you would and I would call actual love-based relationships. Don't make that mistake. People who live their relationships in the gossip pages, that's a business. And you can't start comparing how they do. I mean, having affairs may be a way of promoting an upcoming movie. You know, getting caught having an affair, getting caught in a bar at 2 a.m. with scantily clad may be a way to promote your upcoming movie or to keep your name in the news. So don't mix the two. However, your theory is as good as anybody else's, except yours is not backed by science like those at the University of Texas. I mean, women, it seems like they got a built-in excuse. They can't help it. It's like God programmed them. You are going to give birth. You are going to make sure the species survives, even if you have to have an affair. And I'm going to program it in your genetic code so that if things are not working out, you're going to go out there, you're going to sleep around until you are able to maintain the species. That's their excuse. That's what the research is saying. No, I did not see any. Usain Bolt took 2 girls back to the hotel from celebrating what? His Olympic victory. Okay. Oh, he's got a girlfriend and he took 2 women back to the hotel room anyway, and not one of them was not the girlfriend. Right. You know, I shouldn't admit this because I hear, of course, I'm you. I'm a man of the people. But I didn't watch 1 second of the Olympics. I haven't even seen 1 second of replays. I don't know what Ryan Lochte did. I have not the opening ceremony, closing ceremony. I haven't seen a highlight. I haven't seen live action. I haven't seen a replay. I haven't seen a split. I haven't seen a still shot in a story on the Olympics. I haven't seen one thing to do with it. I probably shouldn't sound so definitive about this, but it has been pointed out to me that I did see a split second of the Olympics, and I commented on it on this program. And I had to acknowledge, yes, it was the sad tale of the Japanese pole vaulter whose schlong, flopping around, destroyed his record-breaking vault. And I did see the GIF. Somebody sent it to me in an email. I saw it, and I described it on this program, and that's it. Outside of that, I didn't read it. So, Usain Bolt. Yeah? What do you do? I assume he's a speedster, sprinter. Right? And are they anybody looking into doping yet? I mean, was somebody, well, just give them time. You know, nothing's real anymore. Yeah, all right, fine, okay, just give it fastest man on the planet for the last 3 Olympics. Right, okay, all right, fine. Look, now I got people email, why, Rush, why didn't you watch? I mean, it's the epitome of athletic. No, it isn't. Don't make me get into this, folks. There's just too much BS that you have to wade through. You could put every night of the Olympics. What is it, 7 to 11? What was it, night 8 to 11, whatever it was. You could probably condense every aspect of athletic competition and do a 30-minute show and not miss anything. Stretched out to 4 hours, mixed in with gun control commentary from whoever the moderator. It was just me. Don't get mad, and I'm not foisting my opinion on anybody else. Look, I need to get back to the phones because I got Karen in Miami who's waiting. It's great to have you, Karen. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Rush, you're my radio crush. I want you to know that. But I want to get down to it. What Trump did was expose the bare naked truth about America, Black America, and the so-called Black keepers of America, and that they are not doing a darn thing for Black America. And because it came from him, you have people offended. But it should be the same thing that should come out of the mouths of Jesse Jackson. It should be heard by Al Sharpton. It should be heard by Tom Joyner. It should be heard by all the preachers.
Yeah, but the people, Karen, the people I'm talking about who ripped Trump over the coals are conservatives. They're conservative writers who are basically saying Trump was insensitive. It was a stupid appeal. He wasn't even speaking to blacks because they weren't in the audience. It was tasteless and all this stuff. So what in the world did I miss about this?
Well, let me tell you why I disagree with that. First of all, he had just come from Louisiana, and Louisiana was destroyed by Katrina, and you saw all the black people and the poor people and how they were upset with Bush for not doing enough. And you have Trump coming off the plane from there. So he had already had this pre-planned event. What else is he going to speak about than speak from the heart, speak from what he sees? That's why he had the conversation he had at the time and in Michigan, but about black America. So it wasn't that he pre-planned to go out and talk about black America over in Michigan. Again, I say, what he said, they're just upset that he said it. It came from him. If those same words had come from Jesse or anybody else, or Barack or anybody else, it should have, it never would because they're cowards. But if it had come from them, it would be okay.
Well, exactly. But the words don't come from, that's the point. The words don't come from them. That is my exact point. The Civil Rights Coalition leaders continue to make African Americans victims. They don't speak of uplifting positive ways to improve life. All they do is convince them that their current lot in life is something they're locked into because evil forces are discriminating against them, and keep voting for us to make sure it doesn't get any worse. Keep voting for us to look out for you. And my only point is the people looking out for them aren't doing anything for them. Now, wait, I know what you're reacting. Well, why should they? Why do people do things on their own? Folks, they have been conditioned to believe the government's going to take care of them. Millennials at this very moment, as we speak, millennials are being conditioned to believe that if government doesn't do something, then nothing is getting done. There are millennials among us as I speak who believe that if government isn't passing laws, then things are broken. Well, now you and I think the exact opposite. When there's a government shutdown or a congressional recess, we breathe a sigh of relief. It means they're not going to be passing any more laws which have further infractions and restrictions on our liberty and freedom. Look at here. This is a great piece. It's in the Washington Times by Richard Rahn, former Chamber of Commerce head honcho back when the organization was conservative. And his premise here, causing less harm by doing nothing. And it's a great piece because it's a piece about climate change and global warming, but it's applicable to everything. We live in a time where crises are manufactured every day. We turn on the news, and every day is a new crisis. Sometimes there's more than one. And with the discovery of every crisis is the requirement or demand that government do something about it. And that's just not how life is. Let me read a portion of this to you to illustrate. It has not only been a waste of money, it has actually done real harm. Some trillions of hard-earned taxpayer dollars have been spent to combat global warming over the last 30 years. Has the spending of all of that money reduced global temperatures from where they would have otherwise been? No. Not at least in any measurable degree. The major governments of the world have undertaken a public policy which to date has cost far more than any benefit derived. The rebuttal by the advocates of all of this government spending is to say that it's nothing more than a down payment on what needs to be done, and the benefits will accrue to future generations. Earlier this month, British scientist Valentina Zarkova And her team at Northumbria University in the UK, using a new model, predicted that a coming periodic reduction in the sun's radiation will soon lead to major global cooling. By the way, I saw that story. And the one thing that the current climate change crowd does not put into their models, and let me stress again, there is no official data that shows a dangerously warming climate. There is none. Over the last 16 years, the Earth's temperature has remained steady. It has not risen. 16 years. The computer models, which is the only evidence there is for global warming, this is so sad, it would be laughable otherwise. There's no evidence of man-made global warming. The climate's changing all the time, but we have nothing to do with it. We're just along for the ride here. We have nothing to do with it. Climate changes in infinitesimal ways. And by the way, in geological times, our lifespan, 85 years, is hardly visible when measured against the life of the planet. We are nothing but specks of sand at the largest. We have no impact on glacier creation, glacier melting, glacier expansion, glacial movement, with none. But besides that, the only reason anybody believes global warming is computer models are predicting it. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, starting in 1980. There is no evidence. There is no data that the world is warming. This is one of the most brilliant, effective hoaxes I have ever seen. And I'm telling you, who has bought it, hook, line, and sinker, is young people. They have bought it because they believe, the fear-mongers and the crisis-mongers, that the planet on which we all live is not going to be habitable by the time they reach retirement age. 30 years, you talk about 1980, 30, 40 years, we're about reaching some of that. We haven't gotten any close to the predictions, but they, a lot of young millennials, they believe it. They've bought it hook, line, and sinker. And they're scared to death. They genuinely are. The whole thing is a hoax. So I see this story about how the computer models, by the way, the computer models do not factor anything to do with the sun. Believe that? The computer models predicting global warming specifically eliminate the sun. You know why? Because to include the sun, and the sun has cycles, high sunspot activity, low sunspot activity. And when the sun is in a low sunspot cycle, it's not producing as much heat. It's not producing as much kinetic energy. It's going to get colder. It's going to get cooler if it sustains. And that's exactly what's happening. So they don't put that in their models. Their models are based solely on CO2, carbon dioxide, the greenhouse effect. Pure and simple. All they do is predict the greenhouse effect 30 years from now. Why the temperatures have to... I just saw a story this morning, I forget where, that the Everglades and Miami are going to be underwater in 30 years. And the story featured a bunch of scientists who have two troughs of water, one fresh water, one seawater. They take the seawater and they pour it on plants. Then they come back and see what happens. Well, of course, the plants die. And then they say, see, with rising sea levels, everything in the Everglades is going to die in 30 years. I mean, it's intelligence insulting to the max. Now, Ron's point is, Richard Ron, we could have done nothing, and every wing would be the same. We could have not spent the trillions of dollars that have been spent. The problem with that is, by not spending the trillions of dollars, a whole bunch of junk scientists and a whole bunch of research outfits wouldn't have received grants either. And so they might be living in poverty, or they might not have jobs, or they might have had to go out and get real jobs instead of writing fake, phony papers predicting dismal results 30, 40 years down the line. But Ron's point is, no matter what, it's R-A-H-N, by the way, is how you spell his name. For many decades, it has been known that a decrease in sunspot activity is associated with lower temperatures. Ms. Zarkova argues that we will soon enter a new Maunder-Minium, which refers to the period from 1645 to 1715, when the sun's surface ceased producing its heat-releasing magnetic storms. During the last couple of weeks, since the release of the new study, the debate has been quite fierce between those who believe that solar changes trump carbon dioxide and vice versa. Remember, climate science is not a unified field of study like quantum physics. It's a combination of many different disciplines, from the people who study tree rings, ice cores, atmospheric gases, cloud science, solar output, and CO2. And then there are people that study sunspots. The thing you have to know is that the global warming fearmongers do not put sunspot activity into their models at all. They simply predict future levels of CO2, and they create mass crises results. The overall point, though, is if we hadn't done anything, everything would be as it was. We haven't changed the temperature at all with trillions of dollars. We haven't changed the temperature at all by determining people can't live here, can't live there, can't drive that car, can't produce this much CO2. We've had all kinds of restrictions on behavior, all kinds of restrictions on liberty and freedom, all designed to save the planet. And nothing we've done has made one iota's worth of a difference. We haven't reduced the temperature, which we must do if these clowns are right. The temperature got to come down or we're cooked. We haven't done diddly squat. The point is, and this is, I think, is what most of us as conservatives believe, just the less government does, particularly with imaginary crises, the better off everybody's going to be. But man, have they done a good job with this. They have created so much belief that these crises every day, every week are real, and that only government can fix it, and only emergency action, which means government has to get bigger. You have to earn less because your taxes go up. It's the only hope we all have. Can't tell you how it enrages me. Suzanne, Lake Charles, Louisiana. Great to have you with us on the EIB network. Hello.
Oh, hi, Rush. Mega dittos from rain-soaked Louisiana.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to let you know, first of all, I just wanted to say how glad I am you've been agreeing with me for all these years.
I appreciate knowing that.
I've been listening to you since I was a freshman back in college since 1988.
People stick with this show. This is the amazing thing about it. I'm so thankful, grateful to you. Thank you.
I used to have a bumper sticker that said "Rush is right."
Still am.
Yes, you are. Listen, I wanted to comment on Hillary's screeching last night on Jimmy Kimmel. He asked her about, the 30,000 plus emails, and then he said, what's with the now 15,000 emails? And she made such a slight about that. She said, what's a few more? And I think that was like her screeching when she was in front of that congressional hearing and saying, what difference does it make? When she passes that off.
Harry, hang on here just a second. I want people, Suzanne, hang on, just grab audio soundbite number 12. Here is the exchange on Jimmy Kimmel Live last night that she is talking about.
My emails are so boring.
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed about that. They're so boring. And so we've already released, 30,000 plus. So what's a few more?
So at the end, you're not concerned that there's going to be something that Donald Trump is able to use against you, that the Republicans, that comes in at the last second.
But he makes up stuff to use against him. So if he would stick with reality, I wouldn't have a worry in the world.
So you think, Suzanne, that when she said, hey, look, I've already released 30,000, what's a few more? That's no difference. What difference does it make?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I think that it's so insulting to the intelligence of the United States citizens that she could just swipe those off. 15,000 emails, Rush.
My question about this is, where did these come from? I mean, we've been told all this time that every email is accounted for. She deleted 30,000. They found 33,000. They've gone through them. And yet here's 15,000 that nobody knew existed. Why was the investigation closed? If they still had this many... Yeah, the emails are from people she wrote to. Emails that were thought to be gone, deleted in the ether. These are emails of people that she wrote to, emails she sent. Not hard to figure out. All right, folks, fastest 3 hours in media. We got 2 down, 1 to go. It's coming right next.